Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity, the podcast that explores what it takes to be well in a busy world with self-care strategies from Chinese medicine. I'm your host, Brody Welch, here to support you on your journey of health, happiness, and personal evolution. Before we jump into the show today, I wanted to express gratitude to Mr. Awesome Possum, who left me a 5-star iTunes review that says, "These podcasts are so insightful and helpful. It's amazing how much misinformation is out there, and Brody's doing an amazing job of educating us and bringing us excellent experts to teach us. Thank you so much." So thank you, Mr. Awesome Possum. You are helping other people know that a healthy curiosity exists. And if you out there listening have been meaning to leave me some love or a review, I would just so appreciate it. And I'm going to try to call out some of these awesome 5-star reviews each week by way of expressing my gratitude, because it really does help people know that the show exists and therefore helps me with my mission of empowering people to get through the world with joy and with maximum vibrant health. And if you have shared episodes with friends or just told people about the show, thank you to you as well. A lot of time and energy goes into producing the show. And so the more people that know about it and the more people that could be potentially helped by it, the better. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, on to today's episode. Welcome to today's show. I'm your host, Brody Welch, and today we are going to be talking about energy. And not in the Chinese medicine sense of energy, just having more of it, fixing our fatigue, and in particular, focusing on chronic fatigue. My guest today is Dr. Evan Hirsch. Dr. Evan, as he's affectionately known, is the best-selling author of Fix Your Fatigue, a 4-step process for resolving chronic fatigue, achieving abundant energy, and reclaiming your life. He himself suffered with chronic fatigue for 5 years before he resolved it using his program that he developed at the Hirsch Center for Integrative Medicine in Olympia, Washington, neighbors up here in the Pacific Northwest. He's helped hundreds of people resolve chronic fatigue and is on a mission to help more than 100,000 through his blog, online courses, books, one-on-ones, and training of practitioners. He's lectured internationally on topics of integrative and functional medicine and is board certified in family medicine and integrative medicine. Dr. Evan, welcome to A Healthy Curiosity. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Brody.
So first off, I know everybody would like more energy, right? It's something that we hear from our patients all the time in clinical practice. Why are we so tired?
It's a great question. And the issue is also, how do we get better? And that's why it's such a big problem, because it's not an easy fix. So let me just tell you a little bit about the causes that I have found over the years. I've found 15 different causes.
Yeah, lay it on us.
And so the first thing is sleep. As you know, as your listeners know, it's so important to have good sleep. Going to bed at 10, getting 7 to 9 hours. I tell people you can't get better, you can't get more energy unless you're sleeping.
It seems so obvious, and yet a lot of times people find themselves, like, even when they desperately need sleep, that sleep is hard to come by and get into that kind of wired, tired state.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so really, which means to me that we also need to focus on stress in order to get there.
Absolutely. And part of that also is the circadian rhythm dysfunction that happens where, people are tired during the day and then they're not sleeping at night, where they really need to be energized during the day and sleeping at night. And part of that is because they have hormonal deficiency. So whether it's adrenal deficiency or thyroid deficiency or sex hormone deficiencies or nutrient deficiencies like B12 and iron, all of those things, which are really caused by a lot of the stress that we have in our environment, end up messing with not only our energy, but our sleep.
So sleep is number one.
One.
We start there. We get good rest so we can have good energy. That's the yin and the yang of it.
Absolutely. And then next up is toxicities. So heavy metal toxicities, there's 100,000 pounds of mercury that's dispensed into our atmosphere and into our oceans every single year. There's 80,000 chemicals that are being put into our products, our cosmetics. 70% of all lipsticks have lead in them. There's this huge toxicity issue that just clogs up our detoxification pathways, causes neurotoxicity in the body, and contributes to feeling tired.
So really, yeah, a lot of people think about, and I think practitioners are guilty of this too, that when someone lacks energy, it's a state of deficiency. It's a state of not enoughness. And it's like what you're talking about from a Chinese medicine standpoint, that's a stagnation issue. There's a too muchness going on, in the sense of like our bodies are overloaded with toxins that we really need to be getting rid of in order to feel better.
Absolutely. And I really group these into deficiencies and toxicities, because, and oftentimes most of the time, the deficiencies are caused by the toxicities.
That makes so much sense, because it's putting an undue burden on the body.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'd like to circle back to that stuff in the environment, because that is something that we're all exposed to all the time. And it seems like, in terms of protecting ourselves from it, is there a most important thing that we should be doing to keep ourselves uh, less burdened?
Well, it's really the basics. It's
Mm-hmm.
drinking enough water. Most people should be consuming about 2 to 3 liters of water a day. It's getting good sleep. We detoxify our brains, actually detoxify at night. They shrink in size by about 60% to allow you to dump all of your toxins. It's exercise. And with a lot of my patients, who have really severe fatigue, they can't exercise. So it's like, all right, how
Right.
do we get the lymph moving? Just jumping in place, doing
Mm-hmm.
burpees if you can do them, doing jumping jacks, simple things for 5 minutes a day, walking when you can, and parking further away so that you can get that exercise. Just so important, and exercise really is this panacea where, there's so much research on it, and it's just so amazing at helping us detoxify. But it's really those basic things, and then consuming a diet that is, people will say, oh, I'm going on this detox diet, but eating a basic, and we might disagree on this since you're a Chinese medicine practitioner, but like a paleo diet or a vegetarian diet, or diets that are low in grains, can really make such a huge difference for people in terms of like living more of that detoxification lifestyle.
Yeah, my take on diet is that there's not a one size fits all approach, and that's really, I think, what Chinese medicine and Ayurveda both have to offer the world, is the sense that we should be doing things differently depending on who we are, what our fundamental proclivities and genetic endowment is, and what phase of life we're in,
Hmm.
in terms of like what kind of a diet we're going to need. So but you just basically underlined, okay, drinking water, getting enough sleep, exercise, eating a whole foods diet. That sounds like exactly what I'm focusing on in my coaching program, Level Up Your Life. So thanks for that lead in, because it's really, at a certain point I was like, oh my god, it's the same solutions, everyone needs the same things, and the focus should be on implementing those things and not just learning more theory about them, which is what I'm most passionate about right now, is like that implementation, getting people to do the things. So yeah, so thanks for that wonderful subliminal lead in.
You bet. Well, and that's why your program is so great, because people need that support. Like it's
Yeah, we do.
so hard to manage this stuff.
It's like all these simple things should not be so hard, and people blame themselves for their lack of ability to follow through on doing all these things. But really, we're in a society where in order to eat consciously, you have to opt out of mainstream food. And in order to get good rest, you have to opt out of the busyness. And in order, I mean, just like down the line, you have to be somewhat of a cultural revolutionary in order to really be your healthiest self. And certainly to be living in integrity with your own values. A lot of times that does require some pulling inward.
Hmm. Gosh, yeah, you absolutely said it. It's such a challenge trying to find great medical care sometimes in this country, especially conventionally, because, they're so divorced from those basic things that are just so powerful and so important.
Yeah. Yeah. So it seems like we're getting down the list of those 15 causes, albeit slowly.
Yeah.
What else makes us tired?
So one of my favorite things to treat are infections. And a lot of I call these things the usual suspects, the heavy metals, the chemicals, the molds, which we'll talk about in a little bit, infections, allergies, emotions, EMFs or electromagnetic frequencies. I call those the usual suspects, and they will upend the immune system and not allow it to function properly. When the immune system's working right, it can keep all of those bugs in balance. A lot of times when people have chronic infections, they've had those infections their entire lives, but the immune system gets out of balance. The bugs become opportunistic, take hold on the body, and then people get symptoms. So it's really about restoring that balance.
And that is, it seems like with patients that I treat who have chronic fatigue, it's like I suspect that there's some kind of underlying infection or some underlying thing. Is a lot of times it seems um, that it's stubborn, it's persistent, and because I am not looking through a functional lens, I'm not ordering lab tests. It's like that. It seems like um, and a lot of times actually these people have had lab tests and things like that, but there's still kind of this mysterious. Well, it's got to be something, but it can be really hard to identify.
Hmm.
Is there in your practice? Is there are are there um, what would you say is a commonly overlooked cause of chronic fatigue?
I mean, the usual suspects, because when I started in functional medicine, I was really working on the deficiencies. I was like, oh, great,
Mhm.
look at, and I actually started in integrative medicine, which is, oh, look at somebody's got high blood pressure. The research says that I can use this herb or I can use this magnesium, and that'll lower the blood pressure. But then I went into functional medicine, which was like, okay, well, let's get at the cause, but it still wasn't getting at the environmental causes, which I really see as those causes underneath the causes. So, those the heavy metals and the chemicals, all those usual suspects really seem to be the most important thing and the thing that most people are missing. And so when they come to me from other clinics, from really gifted practitioners and they're not getting better, I'm like, have you had your mold checked in your body? Have you had infections checked? Have you had heavy metals checked? What are you doing about your emotions? Do you have any emotional trauma? Um, you know, so those things just really bring so much to light, and I feel like that's really where I can help people when they haven't had the help that they needed. Is those things. If they've answered all those questions, they've done all that testing, then hey, you're probably on the right path with whoever you're seeing. But if not, then I can really help those people.
Awesome. Awesome. So those usual suspects, how it is if somebody suspects that they have an issue with, for example, mold or heavy metals, is this something that they can request that their physician order for them?
Absolutely. Yeah, it really just depends on the physician being able and willing and having the knowledge to be able to do so. There is a test for infections that people can do on their own that they don't even need their physician.
Oh, what's that?
And that test is by DNA connections. It's a urine test. So it's DNACONNEXIONS. DNAconnections.com, and you can go on there and it's $500, but the kit comes to you. You want to do a bunch of exercise to release all of the bugs from your lymph nodes, and then you collect the urine, and it's really the best test that I found out there for figuring out whether or not someone has Lyme or its co-infections.
Interesting. All right. I'll make sure that gets into the show notes. All right. Have we exhausted our list of causes or is there more?
We haven't. Let's see. So we did
Uh-huh.
infections, nutrient
Yep.
deficiencies, lack of exercise. So that's a good one because a
Oh,
lot.
let's talk about that, right? Because a lot of people feel like like it's a vicious circle, like that if they exercise, then they're tired or they're too tired to exercise.
Right. And if they are exercising and they become too tired, it's because the exercise is too intense for the organism. It's too intense for the human at this time
Mhm.
because the usual suspects and whatnot has drained, has caused too much stress on the body, and the exercise is just putting more stress. And so, because that's what exercise does, it's a hormetic reaction where you challenge your body, and it ends up responding and making you stronger. It's like building a muscle, right? Now, if you challenge your body and you feel worse, then it's too hard. So yeah, it can be this vicious cycle, but you really have to feel into, if it makes you feel better, great. If
Yeah.
it makes you feel worse, don't do it. It's too much right now.
That's one of the reasons that I really love and teach qigong, is because it's such an accessible for most people exercise form that you can build strength and you can build energy from doing things that seem pretty simple. And so, yeah, I'd encourage people to consider that if it's as a potential form of qigong. Even just standing up and doing some shaking can sometimes just like get you breathing and moving in a way that can help you feel like doing a little bit more movement.
Hmm. And sitting is really the new smoking, right?
Yeah, that is one of my favorite new slogans and catchphrases. It's so bad for us.
Right.
Let's get into why.
Well, I think, yeah, and I think the stats are, if you sit for more than 8 hours a day, you die 3 years earlier.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but then the converse is also true, where if you stand for more than 5 hours a day, it's also
Hmm.
not good. So
Hmm.
you really need that balance, and you really need that movement. Um, yeah, and once again, it's about, we're made for movement. Most cultures, what do they do after work and after dinner? They go dance,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Right. As exercise is not ghettoized into like the 1 hour workout, or
Right.
it's not something that you have to do in a segregated space with a particular uniform. And so, yes, like hacking your environment so that you're moving more, so that you're integrating movement into your life. I think that we humans are definitely meant to be in more than just three positions.
Absolutely. And we're not made for cars, right?
Right.
Like
Hmm.
how, what would our lives be like, thrown back, 3 million years? That's really what we're trying to, our ideal life creation, our ideal health here is really being in that way.
Absolutely. So exercise, definitely, and exercise can so it gets our lymphatic system to, you said, dump the bugs, and
Mhm.
so that presumably our immune systems can handle it.
Right.
Like, yeah, okay,
Exactly.
great.
Yep. Dumping the bugs, dumping the toxins, um, activating our mitochondria, our energy center of every cell in the body. So yeah, it's awesome. And then I was going to jump on to the next thing.
Yeah, go ahead. Hmm.
So then the next one is constipation.
Constipation, interesting. That makes so much sense, from a Chinese medicine standpoint, right? Large intestine is about letting go of yesterday's
Mm.
waste, and it's paired with the lungs, which is about taking in the fresh qi from the environment. And the lungs power the qi around the body. They are, that's one half of the energy equation, right? People think that we get energy from the food that we eat. We actually get it from what we can digest, but as well as the positive digestion of life itself. But breathing, yes, breathing is like oxygen is what our mitochondria need in order for cellular energy, and breathing is what our bodies need in order to feel like they can move.
Uh-huh. And that
Yeah.
was that was the next one, oxygenation.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so crazy important. And just coming back to constipation for a second,
Yeah. Please. Hmm.
if you're not stooling every day, ideally
Hmm.
twice a day, then the toxins are just sitting in your gut and they're being reabsorbed into the body, and then you're increasing your toxic burden all over again.
Such a yucky thought, right? Like, like, okay, I'm gonna let my liver reabsorb all this stuff that's been earmarked for the trash, but no, I'm just gonna let it hang out here. Yeah.
Totally. And then mold. Half of the buildings in this country have water damage, and most of those have mold and other organisms growing on them. And you really only need like humidity of 60% or higher. And right now in Olympia, Washington, it's like 80%. In Phoenix, it's like 10%. But even in New York, New Jersey, it's like 50%. So, it's so common. People are like, no, I don't have a water leak, or no, I don't have any mold. But then when I ask them, oh yeah, we did had a leak up in the attic a couple years ago. Oh, the the basement flooded, and then it
Or even like in
tested.
New England, I remember like just summers in New England. I grew up in Massachusetts, where like literally the people's walls would be sweating in the like in the summer because it was so humid, you know. And then it's of course it dries out. You know, like it doesn't stay like that year round, but certainly there can be. I imagine that that could be like a breeding ground for mold.
Oh yeah. And particle
Yeah.
board, and I mean everything that we use to build our homes is just food. It's just fodder for the mold. And mold is a neurotoxin, right?
Mm.
You know,
How so? Yeah, like I feel like mold is something people don't necessarily hear a lot about. Obviously, I have a few patients who deal with mold issues, severe mold issues, and I know how rough it can be. But walk us through what that looks like. Like how can that manifest for people?
absolutely. So, yeah, oftentimes people will have headaches, neurologic issues where oftentimes there's a lot of brain fog. There's numbness and tingling in the hands and fingers, the extremities, the toes. Um, People usually itch a lot. They'll have itchy skin because it is a fungus. They'll have itchy anus, itchy ears. Those are some signs. They'll crave sugar. Um, yeah, it's vicious, and it is hard to, and it's so nebulous because you can't see it.
Exactly. Well, and it's as you run through that symptom list, it sounds like things that could be. It also sounds like it could be diabetes. It sounds
Mhm.
like it could be, you know, like other things that kind of like maybe because diabetes is so ubiquitous, and for a lot of people, it's like they might think that that's what's causing their nerve. You know, their peripheral neuropathy, or that that's what's causing their itchy skin, or that's what's causing a feeling of you know, a really an unbalanced blood sugar kind of a thing. But it could be that there's also mold going on, and
Right.
that people think that they've gotten to the root when they haven't. That's super interesting.
Yeah, unfortunately, we now have the technology where we can check in the urine for mold toxins or mycotoxins. And those are the toxins that are really damaging the nerves, like damaging the nerves, damaging the mitochondria, damaging cellular structures. Yeah,
And yeah, okay. I'm already thinking of a few people who could really use that that testing. You are a powerful being, and it's really hard to feel that way if you're stressed, overwhelmed, or routinely overriding your body's cries for rest, nourishment, movement, and joy. You deserve to make time to take care of yourself and to enjoy your life, not just get through the day. If you are ready to stop putting yourself last on your own to-do list, you're invited to claim one of the last few spots for the May round of Level Up Your Life, my transformation incubator. We focus on the basics of self-care, but the kind of evolution people experience goes so much deeper. They talk about having more confidence in expressing themselves, finding their voices. They feel stronger, lighter, happier, clearer, and way more stress resilient. Like Rachel, who shares, I'm feeling more comfortable and present in my body, and I can feel the empowerment that comes with that, both physically and also in terms of strengthened boundaries. Thank you for this and for keeping me on this journey of learning, deepening, and growing. It's really an incredible community of conscious women who are serious about showing up differently in the world and living in alignment with the person they know themselves to be. So if you're ready to start living powerfully, I'd love to talk to you. Head to brodywelch.com/level-up and schedule your free call. We'll see if it's a good fit. Now back to the show. Oh, right. So there's all like basically we have to be on guard against all kinds of things from our environment. We have to be moving and sleeping and eating well. And I'd love to get into your approach of how it is that you work with patients to resolve their chronic fatigue.
absolutely. So I usually start off by boosting all of the deficiencies because in order for people to get rid of the crap, that's a technical term, by the way, all that
Absolutely, yes.
environmental crap,
Hmm.
they have to be strong enough. And that means adrenals are robust and the thyroid's robust and mitochondria is good. And so that's where I start, and they start to feel better usually after the first visit or so. And then we can really start going after the environmental toxins. And it's really about, figuring out, what's the most important symptom, what's causing the biggest symptom that's present, and then removing any barriers. So I'm finding a lot lately in the last several years how important infections are. And I've got some really great herbal complexes that I use that will go after them. So, for example, let's take an infection called Bartonella. Causes headaches, sleep problems, muscle cramping, oftentimes cramping in the calves, cramping in the feet, pain in the feet. People are often diagnosed with plantar fasciitis, where they get out of bed in the morning and they step on the ground. They're like, ooh, my feet are
Yeah.
really tender. Um, Anxiety, depression. So all of that might be caused by this infection called Bartonella. So I'll start treating that a little bit after I start opening detoxification pathways, making sure kidney, liver, lymph are all starting to open. But I also need to pay attention to the heavy metals in the mold, because this is where a lot of the Lyme literate doctors get into trouble, is because they're focused so much on the bug that they might hammer the bug until it's gone, but then it just keeps on coming back and it keeps on coming back. And that's because the immune system is not there to help you, because the heavy metals, chemicals, and molds are still present. And until you get rid of those, the immune system will never help you get rid of the bugs.
Okay, so there really is a triage of what the body's going to pay attention to first.
Mhm.
And so, like, if there's heavy metals present, it's not going to be able to, it doesn't frankly have the resources to go after something that it's sort of coexisting with.
Right. And I
Okay.
try to
Yeah.
do them both kind of at the same time, because if I did heavy metals, that's like a 6-month process. If I'm doing mold, that's a 6-month process. And so if I can get somebody's symptoms improved next month by going after Bartonella, and then I'm going to start that, and I'm going to do that while I'm working on these other things over here, so that we can have, at the end, we can have success.
Nice. And I'm sure that having that quick win is motivating for people to keep going in such a long process.
It's huge.
Of course, I think it's important to, like, we sort of segued from fatigue into chronic fatigue without really defining chronic fatigue, but that so maybe let's actually do that now. That sort of, is it just a question of degree? Like, and is it a different? Because a lot of times, like, almost everyone wants more energy, but there are people who have, who literally, like, by the time they're done with their basic self-care of taking a shower and making breakfast, that they're tired, and that then that's it for the day, and that they have to be really cautious about how they spend what little energy they have. So what is the difference between just a healthy person who's tired and someone with chronic fatigue syndrome?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And, it really is that gamut, and it's important to, I always put it on the patient, subjectively, you know, could you have more energy? Because the causes are all going to be the same. The question is, how many do you have? Which ones do you have? And then how
Mhm.
much do they debilitate your life? So,
So it is a question of degree in that case, yeah.
yeah,
Like, that, and so, and yeah, similar to what I would think of as like stress and anxiety. It's like that, just that on a continuum, and that at a certain point you're classified with this more serious version of what everyone experiences to some degree.
right. And giving somebody that diagnosis of chronic fatigue syndrome or myalgic encephalitis, sometimes it can help, because people are like, oh, I've been validated, I've got this thing, but
Hmm.
but sometimes it's defeatist, and it doesn't allow them to find healing. They're like, oh, now I have an answer, now I can just sit here. So you really need that curiosity. You need to keep going, which is why I like it to be kind of open and really subjective as to the patient's experience.
And you just said that myalgic encephalitic syndrome, that for people who are, and I know, and a lot of times, like, fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue get lumped in together. And so for people who have been diagnosed with fibromyalgia who also have chronic fatigue, is this what we're talking about here? Is this something that they can recover from by looking at these root causes?
Absolutely. So, and the causes are the same. Question
Yeah,
is, where are they acting? So people who have fibromyalgia have more autoimmunity and inflammation in the muscles. That's
that makes sense. Yeah. So similar kinds of things, but showing up differently in different people.
correct. And
Okay.
it's that, and that's why it gets so complex, because of the 15 causes, somebody might have 3 and they got better using A, B, and C, and somebody might have 5 different ones and they got better using, D, E, and F. And they're looking at each other and they're saying, well, why did you get better? Why isn't this? And it's just so complicated, which is why it has to be so individualized.
Yeah, exactly. Are there any, I mean, and of course I'm like, yes, individuality, definitely get a personalized diagnosis. Now, what's the general catch-all that we can all do at home? It's like, because there's certain things that are going to help everybody.
Right.
And then there's certain things that are certainly person specific and potentially harmful if it's not appropriate for your particular thing. But is there something that's more specific than the generalized core competencies of self-care that we all know about, that we all should know about with respect to chronic fatigue?
Absolutely. So, I talk about this more in my books too, so like a gentle detoxification, if you want to get rid of the usual suspects, heavy metals, chemicals, molds, and infections, you can do kind of like a gentle detoxification over several years, which is utilizing glutathione, which is the body's main antioxidant and detoxifier to open up those pathways. You can use zeolite, which is binds to heavy metals and chemicals in 4 different ways.
So I know a little bit about glutathione. I took a really great class with Tom Malter a while ago and learned a little bit about that. Zeolite is not something I'm familiar with, and with glutathione, that things like N-acetylcysteine or precursors to glutathione, like there's some things we can take that help the body produce its own glutathione.
Right.
Similar kind of a deal with zeolite.
Not really. So
Not
zeolite,
really. Yeah, it's okay. Tell
yeah,
us about that.
yeah. So it binds. It's a natural material from rock. It binds to heavy metals based on charge and size and shape, and so it's really great for binding them up. But it is also pretty gentle, so it just takes a while.
Mhm.
But it's a great first step into this.
Great. Um, Also, if I'm thinking back to that class, some things uh, that I'm remembering are like the cruciferous vegetables in mass quantities, and like especially in their sprouted form, because like they can be the is it the sulfur or the sulfuric compounds that help us detoxify from there and help us get rid of environmental estrogens and stuff like that aren't necessarily good for us, and things like chlorella and Epsom salt baths I remember as
Uh-huh.
being like kind of general pretty safe detox. I mean, chlorella certainly, like if we classify any plant as an herb, it would certainly be cooling and detoxifying from the Chinese medicine standpoint.
Absolutely. Yep. Those are all good
Yeah.
options.
Uh-huh.
Chlorella and cilantro.
Cilantro, yay. Uh-huh.
And Epsom salt baths are amazing. Magnesium is involved in 550 different enzymatic reactions in the body. And it's so wonderfully relaxing and detoxifying. It's also great for sleep, bringing you back to sleep. So yeah, that's a great option. And then activated charcoal, which is another
Mhm.
kind of binder, much like zeolite, but more specific for mold. You just have to take it 90 minutes away from all food and supplements. And then the last one would be like colloidal silver if you wanted a broad spectrum antimicrobial that could get like a layer of um, of some of the easier to catch infections.
Got it. And is there anything people should be aware of about that one?
You got to go slow and you got to start low. And I like to do that with everything. Go low, start low and go slow. But what you'll find is if you feel worse during any of these processes, it means that you're either detoxifying too much or you're killing the bug, and it's your body's not able to detoxify as much as it needs to, and so the bugs are dying. They release their crap into the body, and they make you feel worse, and that's called a Herxheimer reaction or a die-off reaction, and that means that there are significant infections that are present. And I don't use colloidal silver that much anymore because I like to go bug specific because there is a hierarchy of bugs. So I want to catch, this bug Bartonella first before I go after Borrelia. And if you use something like colloidal silver, you're going to go after each one of them a little bit, and you end up having too much of a Herxheimer reaction, which clogs your detoxification pathways, and then you're 2 steps back and 1 step forward instead of 2 steps forward and 1 step back.
Yeah, and I think that actually right there just underscores the power of knowing what you're dealing with and being able to go after it in a way that's most appropriate for your body instead of in general.
Indeed.
Quick announcement about a Mind-Body Detox Day that I'm going to be hosting on April 14th, which is a Saturday. In Chinese medicine philosophy, the energies of the seasons are reflected in our bodies and minds and emotions as well. And the season of the spring is associated with the liver, which is all about new growth. And also detoxifying our lives from what no longer serves us. And this happens on a mental, emotional, and spiritual as well as physical level. So I'm inviting you to join me for a day where we're going to align with the chi of spring and support our livers so that we can handle stress better, so that we can support our courage, clarity, creativity, and self-expression, keep ourselves in rhythm digestively, reproductively, diurnally, and adapt and evolve into who we are becoming next. We're going to be doing Qigong, breathing, meditation. We're going to be getting into dietary and herbal tips for the change of seasons, as well as acupoints for stress and stress-related problems. We'll go into EFT and tapping for limiting beliefs, and we'll play with essential oils. If you want in, head over to brodywelch.com/mind-body-detox and claim your spot. Hope to see you there. And also, if you love live events, mark your calendars for my retreat that I'm going to be hosting in Mexico at Present Moment Retreat Center, February 16th through 23rd of 2019. That's next year. Get out of the cold and wet and dreary and come hang out on the beach with me. It's going to be super fun. Details soon. But MindBody Detox Day, April 14th. Would love to have you join me. Now back to today's show. So I really appreciate you giving us this sense of what can be done about something that can seem really frustrating and hopeless, and a lot of times like that, just where people get stuck in their diagnosis and not sure what to do next. I'm wondering if you have any other pieces of advice or any other takeaways that you want people to really internalize.
Well, I think, and you've echoed this, and I've seen some of the work that you've done, and you talk a lot about this. It's just so important for people to, step into their own power, for them to realize how important self-care is and how they deserve it. I was on the phone with somebody today, and, she's having such a hard time prioritizing herself. And it's just you don't get better until you prioritize yourself, and then you might have to let something else go, and you just have to figure out what it is, and you have to communicate it to your family and say, hey, guess what, I'm prioritizing myself, and so you guys are going to have to cook dinner once a week or whatever it is, and that's just so important.
Yeah, it is so important. And it's the kind of thing where like the family is probably, it's so much more important to the family that person, that woman in question be doing something to take care of herself instead of taking care of them, because that's going to enable her to feel more energetic, more present, more patient, more and as well as more creative, and give her gift to the world all that much more. You should have her download my You Have the Right to Take Care of Yourself manifesto.
Oh, nice. I
Send
will.
her one. They're free on my website. Anyway, speaking of websites, I'm wondering where people can learn more about your work and potentially get in touch with you.
Absolutely. So you can find me at fixyourfatigue.org. That's fixyourfatigue, FITIGUE.org. And people can work with me in all sorts of different ways. I really have it setting up a tiered system here for what people need. If you're the kind of go-getter and you just need a $5 Kindle book, I've really dumped all of my knowledge into this book, where you can figure out exactly where do you get these labs. You don't need a doctor to do it. And then I tell you how to interpret the labs. And then I tell you what you need to take in order to replace those labs. So you can kind of dive into that.
I want your $5 Kindle book. That sounds awesome.
And then if you want paperback, it's like $18. And then I'm working on online courses And then if you want some more hand holding, you can come see me one-on-one. And I'm now set up to be a coach as well. So right now people fly in from all over to see me for their first appointment so that I can use my MD. And then we just do phone calls the rest of the time, but I see them like every 1 to 2 years. But now as a coach, I'm set up so that I can see people internationally. I just saw my first international patient in Australia, but people don't have to now fly to see me, and I can do about 95% of everything that I can do as an MD because I'm working so much with natural stuff.
Awesome. Dr. Evan Hirsch, thank you so much for being such an informative and fabulous guest today.
Oh, thank you, Brody.
Thanks for listening today. For more episodes of A Healthy Curiosity, you can visit the iTunes store. If you appreciated today's show, please leave us a review. This helps other people to find the podcast. You could also head to brodywelch.com, where you can find free self-care resources, learn more about Chinese medicine, and let me know what you'd like to hear about on future episodes. I'd love to hear from you. Till next time, be good to yourself.